to Sunny with a Chance of Chaos, the podcast that is equal parts optimistic and realistic. Join me as we navigate the ups and downs that everyday life brings. I'm Lindsay, and I'm so glad you're here. So, get a coffee, get comfy, and get ready for a little bit of life's chaos. Hi everyone! The sun is shining right now as I record this, but just barely. It is very early morning, so pardon me if I'm taking sips of coffee in between recording. However, the sun is making everything better and summer is coming and we got this. It's also, as it turns out, the season for renegotiating with the internet provider. And I recently had this experience, which inspired me to record this podcast. But before we get into a debate over being assertive versus being an asshole, I have a voice message from another listener I want to share with you regarding her reflections and experience with comparative suffering. Here she is.
Hey Lindsay, I loved episode 3 on comparative suffering. Comparative suffering is a new term for me. I really like the idea of switching but for and. My kids' extracurriculars are making our lives so busy, and I have a supportive partner and family to help out when it gets to be too much. Changing but to and is so simple and a huge mind shift. I recently had a conversation with my husband about the phrase must be nice to fill in the blank. We have a few people in our life that somewhat regularly use this phrase, and I often don't know how to respond to it without being condescending or blowing sunshine up their ass, so I usually respond with a shrug and a subject change. Next time, I'm going to try an and statement. I also can't wait to switch but to and in the internal dialogue I have with myself. Thanks so much for doing this podcast. Every topic has resonated with me and made me reflect on my own practices and how I can become a better human.
Oh, thanks so much, Amanda. I am so glad that you have found space in your life for the podcast and for personal reflection. You are amazing. Thank you. You're amazing. Okay, on with the episode. Let me set the stage. I was gearing up for my yearly phone call to my internet and mobile provider to discuss why, yet again, my rates had gone up so drastically, as I do every single year. The conversation is the same each and every year. It was starting to feel a bit like Groundhog Day. The steps to this yearly event go as follows. Step 1. I get up the courage to call the company and ask them for what I need and want from them. This step alone usually takes about 2 weeks. Step 2, I get a customer service rep on the phone and I ask politely for them to explain why the rates have gone up. They respond that that particular promotion is no longer available and they can please offer me a different promotion. Inevitably, it's more expensive than the one I was paying for before, right? Step 3, I ask to talk to customer retention. They transfer me. Step 4, I start the conversation all over again. And I let them know that I am dissatisfied, but I do this in a calm and measured tone with a slight edge. Step 5, they offer me a decent deal. We agree on it. I breathe a sigh of relief that this year's internet rate argument is over. And I only have to adjust my household budget a little bit. This year, the conversation started similarly. Step 1 and 2 were the same. I got as far as asking them why the rate was doubling. No joke, guys, doubling. And they replied with the standard, we no longer have that promotion available. So I asked what promotions were available. And that's where the steps took a hard left turn. Step 3, the lovely woman on the phone, Sophia, proceeded to describe a scenario where I would receive a lower speed of internet for a higher cost than I had been paying before. Step 4, my jaw dropped and I stammered, did you hear what you just offered me? Like, did you hear the words that just came out of your mouth? I cannot believe I said that, but I was in total disbelief of what they were offering. Step 5, she said that's all she could offer. And I said, okay, I'll find another internet provider. And instead of the standard step 5 of, oh, okay, ma'am, we can surely find a great deal for you, we went to an unprecedented step 6, where Sophia said, oh, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, if there is anything else I can help you with today, to which I replied, pardon? And she said, thanks for calling. Have a nice day. Wait, what? Hold on. Wait a minute. What? That that is not how this goes. Anyway, the whole thing ended up being pretty funny, but it did not play out the way I thought it would at all. I wound up getting a new internet provider like later that week, and I paid a lot less for it, and that was a win. Point being, I've spent years learning how to be assertive with various companies and organizations and with various people and various relationships with work and friends and otherwise trying to stand up for myself, etc. This has not always been easy for me. Asking for what I need is a work in progress for me. I have a hard time finding the balance between being too meek and just coming across as rude and disrespectful. Where's the balance? So, what is the difference between being assertive and standing your ground and just being an asshole or being aggressive? Let's find out. Let's figure this out together. As for mine and Sophia's fleeting interaction on the phone, we'll actually revisit this conversation later in the episode. The word assertive is defined as having or showing a confident or forceful personality. And as soon as I read this, I immediately divided it into two different categories. Confident equals assertive, forceful equals aggressive. So, to be honest with you, it wasn't actually that helpful at all. There is much subtle nuance that's not included in this definition. There are many areas of our lives in which we're required to be assertive, and this is a skill that must be honed and fine tuned. It's so important for us to have our voices heard. And it's also important to know that the way we use our voice is how we get our point across. We all know someone who goes through their life like a bull in a china shop. They barrel through the world feeling entitled to say what they think, how they feel, demand what they want and what they need without considering how these actions and words might be affecting the people around them. It's like Homer in that episode of The Simpsons where he says, while he's inching closer to the pie that Marge made, he says, "Pie, I'm just going to do this. Arm, arm, arm. And if you get eaten, it's your own fault." Maybe it's a sense of entitlement. Maybe some of these folks just feel like they deserve to be heard. Maybe they're just not great at the delivery. Regardless, folks who tend to be aggressive in asking for what they want make me incredibly uncomfortable. My skin crawls and I want to run away when I witness someone in a store or at the movies. It's like having a go at the teenager on the till who's made an innocent error. I reflected that it's possible that these situations make me uncomfortable because I don't understand it. I don't understand why people have to be mean to get their point across. The old saying comes to mind, you get more flies with honey than vinegar, meaning you're more likely to get what you want from being nice than being aggressive in your delivery. And maybe, if I'm being honest, I even have a little bit of envy for those folks' capacity to stand up for themselves. This is a skill I'm working on, and as a recovering people pleaser, asking for what I need, taking up space, is still a struggle sometimes, though I'm getting better as time moves on and I take more ownership over my voice. So, are these outspoken people who are asking for what they need and taking up space being assertive or just being aggressive? Psst, here's the secret. It's actually not at all in what they're requesting necessarily, but in the delivery. Here's an example of how I learned this the hard way in my teaching life. Very early on in my teaching career, I had a grade 2 class that was extremely chatty. They would talk over each other. They would talk over me. They would talk over lessons. They would talk over the anthem. They would talk over the announcements. Non-stop talking. I loved their energy and I really appreciated the enthusiasm they had for life and also It drove me insane every day. I found myself talking louder and louder as the year went on, approaching yelling, just to have myself heard and get lessons and instructions across. I would correct their behavior in loud tones. I would call them out on their behavior in voices louder than theirs, which you can imagine just added to the overall din and made absolutely no difference whatsoever in actually modifying their talking. I was yelling, they were yelling. My message was not getting across. I was complaining one day in the staff room about my lack of ability to rein them in when a much more seasoned teacher overheard me and she said, "Oh, yelling won't get you anywhere. They'll only talk louder." And I knew she was right. And later on that week, there was a quote on a sticky note in my teacher mailbox in the office, those little pigeonhole things. It was a quote from Rumi, and it said, "Raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder." And I had an aha moment. I needed my words to be louder than my voice. I needed my messages, my lessons, my questions to be so juicy, so enticing, so compelling that no matter at what volume it was delivered, it would be heard. So I started by whispering my morning routine with them. I would whisper instructions. I would whisper the name of the helper of the day. I just kept whispering all day long. They thought everything I said was a juicy secret, and they had to lower their voices in order to hear me. I brought my volume and energy frequency down, and they matched it. Over time, I started actually talking to them again rather than whispering. But we had a lot of fun in those weeks of whispers. And most importantly, they started hearing my words, not just my voice. So, how did this expand and grow and transfer into the rest of my life? Well, for example, I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually yelled at my own kids. Now, hold on, because please do not get the impression that I am perfectly serene at all moments of the day, because this is definitely not true. The bathroom flooding incident from episode 4 was a definite yelling moment. Lindsay yelled. When I'm upset, generally though, with my kids, I explain to them why I'm upset. I ask them to remedy that in whatever way they can. Like the time a couple years ago when I found a peach pit in my shoe along with 3 apple cores under the throw rug beside the shoe. And instead of yelling, "What were you thinking?" I calmly said, "I'm curious about how this got here, and I'm wondering if there's something you can do to fix it." It worked, and I didn't have to yell. When I find myself in a disagreement with a partner or a friend, the hydro company, I tend to find now my voice naturally lowers. It softens and it gets quiet. It's automatic now. One of my more recent students actually, it was a crazy day in the classroom, and he announced to the whole class, guys, Mrs. McQuinn's voice just got quiet." And then he leaned over to me and whispered, "That's how I know you're mad." I laughed until I cried. He had my number, and also he knew how I was feeling without me shouting and yelling and being aggressive. It was a lovely and validating moment in teaching that I still laugh about today. That was a great kid. So let's go back to my internet provider conversation. Me and Sophia. Was I assertive or was I being aggressive? I was certainly quite sarcastic and possibly a little demeaning. If you'll recall, I said, "Did you hear what you just offered me? Like, did you hear the words that were coming out of your mouth?" Pretty rude. Not my finest moment. I was unhappy I had to make the call in the first place. I was unhappy I was having to ask for what I wanted and needed, which I don't like doing. I was unhappy about how much the internet costs in the world generally. And overall, I was just not in a great place to be having that conversation. My emotions got the best of me. No, I didn't yell. I didn't have to yell at Sophia. I didn't want to yell at Sophia. She was nice enough. She was lovely. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten her. I did nothing like that. But I did not get calm and whispery like the teacher version of myself either. I was sarcastic and I was condescending. I was kind of an asshole. I definitely did not get what I wanted in the end from the company. So would this story have ended differently if I had been kinder, more persuasive, less demeaning? I don't know. Maybe internet is just expensive now and there's nothing we can do about it. We are at the mercy of inflation, my friends. And yes, the story has some humor, but I also recognize that I wasn't my best self in that moment. And I definitely leaned towards asshole more so than assertive. Let's briefly chat about women and assertiveness and that combination. If you'll recall, we went through a period of time a few years ago where being a Karen was a thing. As an aside, I feel so bad for anyone who is lovely, who is named Karen. This is a wrongful labeling, no doubt, for most of the actual, like, on their birth certificate Karens I know. However, the intention behind this viral phenomenon was to describe a woman who cannot keep her cool, who demands to speak to the manager after any small incident, and who feels entitled to what she is owed in every aspect of her life. Now, what is the difference between being a so-called Karen and just being an assertive woman? We have a problem in North American society, and I'm sure the world over, where a woman who speaks her mind, asks for what she needs, or asserts herself is often labeled a bitch or bossy. Women have been trained to be polite by folks who continue to project that assertive women are bulldogs, and now Karens. As a woman, it's really difficult to ruffle feathers, disturb the peaceful waters, and shake things up a little bit without being labeled as such. It's been rare for me throughout my life, both personally and professionally, to hear these things stated about a man who sits around the table at a meeting and asserts himself, or interjects, or shakes things up. I am not implying that this is the truth in every workplace or social setting. However, traditionally speaking, women have been given a hard time when they speak up, use their voice, demand to be heard. I want this to change. I want assertive women to be viewed as strong, not bossy or bitchy. And I also want to quote Karen Salmonson here, who said, "It's okay to speak up for yourself, be assertive, and refuse disrespect. It doesn't make you a bitch. It makes you someone who is setting healthy boundaries." I love this. Thank you, Karen Salmonson. It's also not lost on me that her name is Karen. I love that. I found this lovely little resource, this other resource on a website while researching and reading for this episode. It was anonymous, but I wish I could give someone credit for it because it is beautiful. It goes like this. To the women who are labeled aggressive, keep being assertive. To the women who are labeled as bossy, keep on leading. To the women who are labeled as difficult, keep telling the truth. To the women who are labeled as too much, keep taking up space. To the women who are labeled as complicated, keep asking hard questions. If you are a teacher, a mother, an older brother, a stepdad, any of these things, any of you who have influence over children in your life, please read that little passage to them. Boys, girls, anything in between. Let them know that people in general, regardless of their gender, they don't have to yell to have their voices heard. Let them know that they can take up space, and they can sometimes do it by merely whispering. And we're back in the stacks. Okay, so the book, I'm going a little rogue again this week with the book. The book I'm recommending is actually a workbook. It's called The Assertiveness Workbook, How to Express Your Ideas and Stand Up for Yourself at Work and in Relationships. It was written by a psychologist named Randy J. Patterson. This workbook walks you through exercises and activities to help you express yourself with confidence and clarity using a cognitive behavioral therapy model. The podcast I found is called The Psychology Behind with Dr. Linda Papadopoulos. The episode that interested me in particular is called, you'll never guess, How to Be Assertive Without Being Aggressive. It's on par with our conversation today in this particular episode. The TED Talk I found is called The Beauty of Assertiveness by Dr. Abby Hamilton. She's adorable to listen to. Her message is beautiful and inspiring. I really enjoyed that one. And as always, gratitude is the antidote for chaos in my own life. And this week, I want to thank my kids. They have had a deep well of patience for the time I spend on this new passion project, Sunny with a Chance of Chaos. And the time I spend talking about it, it's absurd. They're very patient with me. I also want to thank them for an absolutely wonderful Mother's Day and birthday a couple weeks ago. These two teenage boys are exceptional humans, and I am so lucky to be their mama. I'm so lucky. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, everyone. This week, when the chaos hits, don't forget to turn your face towards the sun. I'll see you next time. Bye.